So we're going to be adding some randomness into our pattern. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how randomness works. I'm going to use the console to demonstrate a couple things. So in general, randomness just refers to something that's unexpected. So most of the time in the projects that we've been making, we're using numbers that are known. We know exactly where this one starts and where it ends. There's no unpredictability. But in a lot of different applications, randomness is really useful to make things more interesting, whether it's art. If you play video games, there's a lot of randomness in video games to change the difficulty level or the number of players or elements in the game. And that way, it's unexpected. There's things that happen that you're not expecting. So randomness is really useful, and it's pretty easy to use, but you kind of have to understand a little bit about how it works. In JavaScript, we have this thing called math, which is just a bunch of functions that do different various math functions. We used pi, even though we were using P5's version of pi, which is just the regular pi. P5 gives us a lot of this stuff without having to directly access it from math, including randomness. But there's a lot of different math functions in here that we might want to use in our code. And one of those functions is math.random. And that just gives us a random number between 0 and 1. So math.random is always something between 0 and 1. It's never 0 or 1 exactly. And it's always some really long string of numbers that's random. And so we can use that to create interesting randomness, but we have to manipulate it because not everything is going to be on a 0 to 1 scale. So we can use math.random times 10 or math.random times 100. Oops, I forgot to add in the parentheses. And then we don't have to use this one either, but we can also do math.floor, math.random times 100. And that's going to give us a whole number. So that'll cut off the decimal point. Yeah. Math.floor is going to round it down. Math.ceil, and these functions exist in P5 too. Math.ceil is going to give you, it's going to go up to the next whole number, and math.round actually will go whichever one is closer. So we don't actually know which one it's using because we don't see it. But so if I said like variable I equals math.random times 100, so that's I. If I say math.round I, it's going to go up to 81. Math.ceil I, also 81, and math.floor I is 80. So that's what's happening internally in JavaScript, but P5 gives us a few functions that can do sort of more sophisticated stuff. So let's just log a couple things using P5. So this won't work in here in the console because it doesn't have P5 there, but it will work in a P5 sketch. So let me just log some random numbers. I'll put them down here. And I'll open up the console so we can see that. So, and also let's look at random. Do I have a link to it? Should have linked to it. Okay, let's just open. So I'm going to open the P5 reference. And it's under math. So you can see P5 uses a lot of the same math functions, but we don't have to put math in front of it. And one of them is, where's random? Oh, they have a whole section for random. So they have a few different types of random. We're just going to use the basic type. And so random has a few different ways of using it. You can have a min and max, or you can have some choices. And so we'll look at how to do both. So if I say random and I just put a number like 1, and I'm going to log these. So I'm just going to put these inside console.log. This is going to be the same thing as math.random. So it's going to be some number between 0 and 1. If I say random of to 100, it's going to be some number between 0 and 100. So the minimum value is assumed to be 0, and the max number is whatever I put in the parentheses. If I put a range, so this is going to be really useful for us. If I say random between, let's say I want a color, but I only want like a certain amount of blue. So let's say I have like 200 to 255. So that means there's going to be a lot of blue. So it gives me this 251. And that'll actually work, but if I want to make sure that it's a integer and not a floating point number, I can use round. I don't have to use math, although it would work here. In P5, I can just use round by itself, and that'll give me a whole number. So then I can also use negative numbers. I can say random -10, and that'll give me something between -10 and 0. And I can say random -10 to 10. That'll give me something between -10 and 10. So this one is -2, but it could be +2 if I run it again. It's +6 that time. So this is really useful for us to make random colors, random positions, random sizes for our shapes. We can use ranges instead of having to just apply a number between 0 and 1. Another thing that can be useful is I can just choose random things. So I can use random, and we actually haven't talked about this data structure yet, so it may be a little confusing, but in JavaScript, there's something called an array, which is like a list. And we write one by using 2 curly brackets, and then you could put different pieces of data in here. So if I wanted to choose a random color, I could put like blue, green, red as strings. And so I just put in the data and then a comma, and then the next data, comma, and the next data, and then close it over here. That's a list. And you can see it'll choose one of those values for me. So that's another way that I can choose a random color that is a little bit easier math-wise. Okay, so I'll leave those down there. And so let's see how this actually looks when we put it into our project. So the nice thing about using a loop together with randomness is we can actually see the effect of the randomness and how it will work differently. So let's start with some colors. So if I say random, if I say I'm going to say C for color, and I'll say random, and I'll use my same list here. I'm just going to copy and paste that here. So it's going to choose a random color for me. So notice that this is before my for loop. Okay, so now before I draw my ellipse, I'm going to fill with C. And so now I'm getting a random color, but they're all the same. Okay, that's because I defined C before I got inside of my loop. So if I take this code and put it inside my loop, now I'm going to be making a random color every time I go through the loop. So each one of my circles is going to be a different color. So I can generate different patterns by using some randomness. And so that's kind of cool. I might want to control the randomness a little bit more. So there's ways that I could do that using some different numbers. Let's see, what did I do in here? Okay, yeah, I did a fill with RG and B here. So I can also do the number values. So if I say variable R is random, and there's 255 for my color range. Each one of my colors can be between 0 and 255. So I have red is random 255, blue is random 255, and green, usually it's RGB. I should put this one down here, although it doesn't actually matter what order it's in. And this one is also random 255. Okay, so now let's actually use this. So fill red, red, green, and blue. And let's make these guys lets so they stop existing after we get out of the for loop. Okay, so now I have just completely random colors each time. Let's turn off our stroke for now. And so that's cool. All the colors are just completely random every time, and sometimes it looks good, sometimes it, whatever. But if we want to make some choices, this is where we can use our range. So for example, if I want there to be less red, I could say the highest value for red is 100. So now some of the darker colors are going to be kind of red, but almost all the colors are either blue or green. Because I'm adding, there's less possibility, even though it's unpredictable, the range of red is smaller. If I want to make sure there's more green than blue, I can raise the bottom of how much green I'm putting in. So I'll put green at 100. Now most of my colors are green. There's some blue, and there's not really any red anymore, because the lowest value for the green is higher than the other ones. So it's still unpredictable, but it's a little bit more controlled. So if I change that range even more, it's almost all green, but there's these different shades of green. So I can use the ranges in my values to have a certain effect. And this could be useful if I want to make some like grass or something like that. Obviously, most of my grass is going to be green, but they're not all exactly the same color. So I could have my grass be green. I could bring the blue down a little bit, so there's going to be less blue. It's probably still too much blue for grass, but you get the idea. So randomness can be really useful for creating new ideas, new patterns, different stuff. You can't really see the colors as well on the monitor, but I think, or on the projector, but I think it's good enough. Okay. So what else can we do? Oh yeah, we can do random sizes. So let's change our ellipses a little bit. So we can do the fill as random. We can also say let s for size equals random. And so we could do something between 100 and 200. And so if 100 is the lowest value, all the circles are still going to fit next to each other. So they're going to be overlapping a little bit. And so that might look cool. You can see since it's a for loop, they're going from left to right. So the ones on the right are all on top of the ones on the left. If you wanted to do the other way, you could reverse the loop, start at width, and count down to 0. But depending on what you want to go for, that looks kind of cool. If I added like a lot of these, maybe that would be kind of cool. Like if I did more. So if I make x smaller, I get more circles. It looks kind of interesting. So I can randomize the size. I can also randomize the position a little bit. I'm going to turn the size factor down just a bit and turn this back up again. Okay, I can also, let's vary the y value a little bit. So say y is always going to equal 200, so it'll always be in the middle of the canvas, but we can add to that. So we can say y is 200 plus, and let's do a random number, and let's go negative. So let's go negative 50 to 50. And so this will add a little bit of variation on the y. And so we're getting these kind of different effects with the y. So that looks kind of cool. If I like that, I could also do something like this, where I could take y outside of my for loop, put it up here, and say y plus equals random negative 50 to 50. And what that's going to do is it's going to start with y at 200 somewhere, and then it's going to move up and down, but it won't be able to completely reset. So it's going to have a trend. It's going to go, up and down step by step. So that might be kind of cool. I'm just kind of doing random stuff since we are doing random. So let's tidy this up. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, we did the Y position. So this is just a combination of stuff. Okay, so let's add a little bit more to our design. So we have this ellipse, and you know, it looks fine. We could put some more stuff in here, so we don't have to just draw an ellipse. We could draw some other stuff, and let's see. Let's draw. I'm trying to think of what would be cool to add to this. I guess we'll just do the general self-portrait stuff. So I'll do the ellipses like the face. It's going to look kind of weird since they're all overlapping, but maybe it'll be kind of cool. So then for the eye, I'll draw another ellipse at X. And for the right eye, I want to move X over a little bit. So I'm going to add X plus 20. And then I'll say Y. I want to move up a little bit. So I'll say Y minus 20. And then let's do half the size. So I'll do size divided by 2. And we're going to need to change the fill to see it. So let's change the fill to black and see how that looks. Okay, let's do size divided by 4. Okay. So then let's do the other eye. So I'll copy this and just put X going in the other direction. And okay, now we've got a little trail of self-portrait guys. And we could also randomize stuff. Like we could say X plus random 20 in here. So the eyes will kind of be in different places. You can add random to pretty much any number. And actually, instead of filling, let's just change. I'm still going to fill R, G, and B, but let's just randomize one of our colors. So let's say red plus equals. So after the face, I'm going to add a little bit to red. So it'll make it a little bit lighter. So I'll say red plus equals random, let's say 50 to 100. This might be, yeah, it's not enough to see. So let's say 100 to 200. Okay, that's kind of cool because it's the same, it's a similar color, but just with lighter red value. And the eyes are too close together, so let's move this one over. So I'll add 60 as the other side of this. Okay, this is kind of cool. So maybe this would be a good program to use if you were trying to create like a fake audience in a video game or something like that. Let's add the mouth just to kind of finish it. So for the mouth, I'll do a rectangle. Say X, we'll just put it in the middle, and Y plus, let's say 40 to get it farther down. And for the size, I'll do size over 4 for the width and size over 8 for the height. And I'll do size over 16 for the rounded edges. Okay, it's a little bit too far down, so let's do Y plus 30. Although I guess for each one it's different. They have different sizes, but that's okay. Let's increase this a little bit more so it's not so overlappy. So let's say 80. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay, so yeah, you can randomize whatever you want. It kind of depends on what you want to play with. As far as for the assignment, it's really fine just to play around with different stuff. If you have an idea of a pattern that you want to make, you know, feel free to try to implement that. But you can also just play with different stuff, add different shapes. It doesn't have to really look like anything. It's just kind of playing with the loop to repeat stuff and then playing with randomness as well. All right, so I'm going to save this. I think this is good enough to get started. I'm going to stop recording.